So let's go ahead and pray. Gracious and loving God, we give you thanks. We thank you for this technology that allows us to gather together across great distances and to continue to share in the study of your word. We thank you for this group of disciples, and we ask that you would now bless our time together as we converse with one another, that you would open our hearts and our minds, and that your Holy Spirit would move among us in all our various locations to help teach us and help us grow closer together and closer to you and stronger in our faith. We ask these things in Jesus' name. Amen.
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 Okay. All right. Hi, Harry.
Hey,
Yeah, I go to pray and I come up and Harry's here. So
of course. I'm
never
getting better at
let
this
them tell you
computer.
prayer doesn't work.
Every
All
day,
right.
every day I think I'm getting better on this thing, and then I mess it up somehow.
Well, we're glad you're here. Well, let's go ahead and get started then. So we are in chapter 26. I don't know how, long we'll be tonight since we're on Zoom together, and these are kind of short chapters, but we'll give the old college try here and see what we can pull out of here. These are the last of David's encounters with Saul, pretty much, and we're rapidly approaching the end of the book and the end of Saul, as it were. So let's go ahead and we'll dive right in here in chapter 26. Chapter 26 is pretty similar to chapter 24, with a few minor details changed. So let's go ahead and I want to read the whole chapter, but we'll break it up a bit so that not one person is reading the whole thing. So could somebody start and just read verses 1 through 12 for us?
Then the Ziphites came to Saul at Gibeah, saying, David is in hiding on the hill of Hachilah, which is opposite Jeshimon. So Saul rose and went down to the wilderness of Ziph with 3,000 chosen men of Israel to seek David in the wilderness of Ziph. Saul encamped on the hill of Hachilah, which is opposite Jeshimon, beside the road. But David remained in the wilderness. When he learned that Saul had come after him into the wilderness, David sent out spies and learned that Saul had indeed arrived. Then David set out and came to the place where Saul had encamped. And David saw the place where Saul lay, with Abner, son of Ner, the commander of his army. Saul was lying within the encampment, while the army was encamped around him. Then David said to Amalek, the Hittite, and to Joab's brother Abishai, son of Zeruiah, who will go down with me into the camp to Saul? Abishai said, I will go down with you. So David and Abishai went to the army by night. There Saul lay sleeping within the encampment, with his spear stuck in the ground at his head, and Abner and the army lay around him. Abishai said to David, God has given the enemy into your hand today. Now, therefore, let me pin him to the ground with one stroke of the spear. I will not strike him twice. But David said to Abishai, do not destroy him. For who can raise his hand against the Lord's anointed and be guiltless? So David said, as the Lord lives, the Lord will strike him down, or his day will come to die, or he will go down into battle and perish. The Lord forbid that I should raise my hand against the Lord's anointed. But now take the spear that is at his head and the water jar, and let us go. So David took the spear that was at Saul's head and the water jar, and they went away, No one saw it or knew it, nor did anyone awake, for they were all asleep, because a deep sleep from the Lord had fallen upon them.
Okay, let's pause there. Thank you, Ed. And just look over and note what are some of the differences already that we can see between this episode and then the episode we had in chapter 24. Remember where Saul goes into the cave and David cuts off the corner of his cloak. There's some differences already. Well, don't all speak up at once.
Well, doesn't can you hear me? I don't know.
Yeah.
Okay. When Saul was in the cave, it was just Saul. His men were outside the cave. But in this one, his men were sleeping with him, the way I read it.
Yeah.
Or in
Yeah,
the
his whole
same-
army, all 3,000 of them, right? That's how much you took, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because what was his name? The Abner, son of Ner, the commander of the army, both had laid down. Saul was lying inside the camp with the army encamped around him.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas in the cave, David had his army around him and Saul was by himself.
Well, and not only were they with them, but these two were Saul's men that were actually like let him go in there and offered to help. Right? I mean, isn't this Abishai?
These are two of David's men.
Oh, are they two of David's men?
Yeah. So actually I have a note about Abishai here. So he is Joab's brother. He's one of the sons of Zeruiah, who's David's sister. Abishai and his two brothers, Joab and Asahel, are prominent members of David's warrior band. Joab becomes David's chief military commander, and Asahel is killed in an incident that starts a blood feud with difficult consequences for David. This is in 2 Samuel. Abishai was a member of David's elite 30 and had been involved in numerous exploits that required a ready sword. So Abishai has a reputation for being confrontational. We'll leave it at that.
You know, I was kind of thinking when in the last one when the robe was torn.
Yeah.
To me, that was kind of, well, I can't think of really the proper word, but pretty disrespectful and kind of a negative thing. And in this one, he's not acting out of any disrespect. He's protecting him. So to me, that robe was supposed to be, at least from some understanding that I read, was supposed to be pretty sacred, and to tear a piece off of it is kind of sticking his nose up and saying, well, you're not, I don't have much time. I can't think of the words, but it's maybe I'm thinking that I don't want to kill him, but I want to do him some harm, either by insult or by not being respectful or anything else. But he doesn't act that way in this at all. He won't let anybody near him. He's very protective.
He
So
does.
they-
He prevents Abishai, his right hand man,
Mm-hmm.
from
Killing him.
killing Saul
Right.
with the spear. Now Abishai is not gonna miss with the spear. He said,
Mhm.
"It only will take one strike. I will not strike him twice."
Yeah.
near his head, you know, I mean, it's right. Or you got it near his head, he doesn't have to throw it very far.
So I think
Just
it's
a
kind of
thought.
funny. David takes the spear that Saul keeps missing him with, Um,
Maybe he needs a few lessons in spear throwing. I don't know.
so yeah, in this one, David goes to Saul. David seeks out the camp, finds where the camp is, and takes a man and sneaks into the camp. Whereas in chapter 24, Saul came to him
Right.
into the cave. He actually goes to Saul. So he takes some agency here. And
He's quite different in this in chapter 26.
yeah. Also want to point out what David says about why he chooses not to kill Saul this time. In
Because
verse
he's
10.
anointed.
Well,
Well, he's anointed by God.
God.
I mean,
he's
Yeah,
God's anointed.
good. Yeah, it's the same that's the same thing that he said in chapter 24, right? I'm not going to
Mhm.
raise my hand against the Lord's anointed.
That's what he said.
yeah, but he
Um,
didn't seem to feel it very deeply when he tore the robe, tore the chunk off of it.
Well, but he goes a little bit further in this one, in verse 10. As the Lord lives, the Lord will strike him down,
Yeah.
or his day will come to die, or he will go down into battle and perish. Now, if you've read ahead, you know it's the last one. He dies in battle
Mm-hmm.
at the end of the book. But this is David's conviction that I don't have to kill Saul because God's going to accomplish that for me. This, Saul is the enemy that stands, first off, is threatening David's life. Saul's the one that stands in the way of David returning home and living a peaceful life, whether he wanted to be king or not, just, living in his own country. David's on the run right now. Saul's what stands in the way of that. But also Saul's what stands in the way of David becoming king. David knows he's going to become king by this point. But David is not going to take that into his own hands. He's not going to raise his hand against Saul because he knows that's wrong. And he trusts that God is going to get rid of the obstacle for him. He doesn't have to take matters into his own hands.
Hands.
And I think that's a pretty significant detail here. And then we already see that God is active in this whole story because there at the end, no one saw it or knew it, nor did anyone awake, because they were all asleep, because a deep sleep from the Lord had fallen upon them. So the reason David isn't caught, the reason they're all asleep in the first place, is God had caused a deep sleep to come upon them, according to verse 12. Any thoughts or comments or questions about that? Or the rest of these verses?
I like what you pointed out about how he was going to let God move the obstacle in his way to becoming king, not taking
Mhm.
it, doing it himself. We
Yeah, I think sometimes that can be a difficult point of discernment for us,
Mhm.
Because I think there's two extremes, right? You can either just sit around and wait and say, well, God will do it. God will do it. God will do it. God will accomplish it. But you're
And then
not
we-
actually taking any
Right.
initiative to respond. It's like one of my favorite jokes. The guy is in his house and the flood waters are rising. The car comes by and they shout out and they say, "Hey, come with us so we can get you to safety." And he says, "That's okay. God will save me." And then the flood waters rise even more. He goes up a level and a boat comes by. Come on, get in with us and we'll row you to safety. And the guy says, "That's okay. God will save me." And then he goes, flood waters rise and he goes up on the roof and a helicopter comes by and come on and get in the helicopter, we'll fly away to safety. And he says, "That's okay. God will save me." And the flood waters rise even more and the guy drowns. And he goes to heaven and he goes up to God and he says, "God, what gives? I trusted that you would save me and you didn't." And God said, "I sent you a car, a boat, and a helicopter. What more do you want from me?"
Gee.
Right? So we can either have that extreme of just kind of sitting around and not taking any action, or I think the other extreme is taking all the action for ourselves and going to, extreme means in order to accomplish our goals that, the means maybe not are, they may actually go against God's will. Like in this case, David says, I'm not gonna lay hands on him because that's not what God wants me to do. That's not right. So I think it could be tricky kind of finding that balance.
Yeah, it is.
I don't know. What do you all think? Have you had experiences with that?
Would you repeat that question?
Have you had an experience where there was an obstacle, maybe not a Saul, but something that and I don't know, you could take it upon yourself to get rid of the obstacle, but doing so would go against your character some way. Because that's really kind of the situation that we have here.
Sounds like an ethics question.
Yeah.
That's probably why I didn't get it. I didn't get it in law school.
You don't have ethics in law? Now everything makes sense.
Exactly.
Well, I think it's something to think about, But let's go ahead and move on then to the next part of the chapter. We got verses 13 through 25 here. So would somebody else read that for us?
I can read it. I'd be happy to.
Thank you, Jane.
Then David went over to the other side and stood far off on the top of the hill with a great space between them. And David called to the army and to Abner the son of Ner, saying, "Will you not answer, Abner?" Then Abner answered, "Who are you who calls to the king?" And David said to Abner, "Are you not a man who is like you in Israel? Why then have you not kept watch over your lord the king? For one of the people came in to destroy the king your lord. This thing that you have done is not good. As the Lord lives, you deserve to die, because you have not kept watch over your lord, the Lord's anointed. And now see where the king's spear is and the jar of water that was at his head." Saul recognized David's voice and said, "Is this your voice, my son David?" And David said, "It is my voice, my lord, O king." And he said, "Why does my lord pursue after his servant? For what have I done? what evil is on my hands? Now therefore let my lord the king hear the words of his servant. If it is the Lord who has stirred you up against me, may he accept an offering. But if it is men, may they be cursed before the Lord, for they have driven me out of this day, that I should have no share in the heritage of the Lord, saying, go serve other gods. Now therefore let not my blood fall to the earth away from the presence of the Lord, for the king of Israel has come out to seek a single flea, like one who hunts a partridge in the mountains. Turning the page. Then Saul said, I have sinned. Return, my son David, for I will no more do you harm, because my life was precious in your eyes this day. Behold, I have acted foolishly and have made a great mistake. And David answered and said, here is the spear, O king. Let one of the young men come over and take it. The Lord rewards every man for his righteousness and his faithfulness. For the Lord gave you into my hand today, and I would not put out my hand against the Lord's anointed. Behold, as your life was precious this day in my sight, so may my life be precious in the sight of the Lord, and may he deliver me out of all tribulation. Then Saul said to David, blessed be you, my son David. You will do many things and will succeed in them. So David went his way, and Saul returned to his place.
Hey, thank you, Jane. All right. So, yeah, a lot of things different here from chapter 24. Thoughts on what we just read, or any questions in particular?
It was a long time coming for him to make the decision that he wouldn't end Saul's life himself. And so now that they've come to that position in this part of the movement of the kingships, now to the next level, I guess, as David takes over eventually, it's just kind of an amazing process that they've been through all these different steps to finally realize that it's all in the Lord's plan, and you need to accept that and live by it.
So I guess I was wondering about this line. If, however, men have done it, may they be cursed before the Lord. They have now driven me from my share in the Lord's inheritance, and have said, go serve other gods. I guess I'm not real clear on what David's saying there. And I don't have any notes in my Bible to help me out.
So I think, so David's still trying to figure out why is Saul coming after me? Right? So if it's God who stirred you up against me, then an offering would suffice to remedy that, right? But maybe, David's thinking, maybe there's some other people that are stirring Saul up against me. And because of that, he's been driven from his homeland. He's running around. He keeps having to go from place to place. He keeps having to move in order to avoid Saul. And as long as he's in Israel, Saul keeps coming after him. So I think he's thinking, because in the next chapter, he goes to the land of the Philistines.
Yeah.
So I think he's thinking, I'm being driven out of my homeland. I would much rather, because he says, don't let my blood fall to the ground away from the presence of the Lord. In that time, the gods of each nation were very much tied to the land that they were in.
Okay.
So there was this thought that if I go outside of Israel, then I won't be where God is anymore. That's why Jonah thought he could run away from God. And he couldn't. So but he thought if he got out of the land and got way far away, he could run away.
Right.
So when we read these kinds of things, there are some places in the Bible where it becomes apparent that God is tied to the land. So for David to go into another land, to the land of the Philistines, and to put himself into the service of the king there, in his mind is to serve other gods.
Gotcha.
And so he's kind of saying, I'm being forced to do this. And maybe this is a little bit of an apology for why he's going to go into the land of the Philistines. Maybe there were people who were saying, hey, you spent a year in Gath, fighting
Right.
for their king. What's that all about? And David's basically, I think here David is saying, well, I had to. There was nowhere in Israel that I could go that Saul wouldn't hunt me down. He's hunting me like
Flea.
somebody who's come out to seek a single flea. You can hear the frustration in David's voice. He's like, I can't. You just keep coming after me. And why? Why? Why is it so? I'm just one person, and you bring on 3,000 people after me, and I can't. There's nowhere that I can go that I've said. There's nothing that I've done. Why do you keep doing this? He's got to be really, really frustrated. But as frustrated as he is, he doesn't take the opportunity twice now to kill Saul when he has the chance, which I think says a lot about his character, at least at this point.
Right, he does.
So I think that's kind of what that's about is he's saying, I'm being forced to go into the land of the Philistines and to serve their king, and therefore to serve other gods. And that's kind of what he's saying.
Okay.
I would rather stay here in the land if I could.
Is there a fear there of him because he's thinking he's got to go into the land of Philistines? If he died there in the land of the Philistines, his blood's not dying in Israel. He's not dying in Israel. So he'll be separated from God.
Ooh, maybe.
Yeah, there's a fear of not dying in Israel.
Yeah.
I don't know if he's afraid he'll be separated from God. That'd be an interesting question to ask.
God, when I get there?
Yeah.
Okay.
Or David.
Or David.
Well,
Okay.
When you get there.
No hurry.
Yeah, I don't know all the ins and outs of because our beliefs, they kind of have changed over time. Even our beliefs are somewhat different today in the church than they were 2,000 years ago. And so it's the same for the Israelites. Their beliefs about God, they changed over time. That back then in David's time, they believed in Sheol is where you go when you die. And that's where everybody goes. So they didn't have a heaven and hell. They didn't know about those yet. So I don't know if it was important to them to die in the land. I think it was important to be buried with their fathers. And Jacob, he dies because Jacob dies in Egypt, and then they have a whole processional, and the Pharaoh goes with them to carry his bones back to the land of Canaan to bury him with his fathers, with Isaac and with Abraham in the cave at Machpelah that Abraham had bought off of the Hittite, where all of them were buried. And so it was important for them to go back and to be buried in the land.
I have a really good footnote in my Bible on this.
Mm-hmm.
It says, David seems to be near the end of his endurance. Serve other gods reflects the common Near Eastern idea that a god could be worshipped only on its own soil.
Yeah.
also perhaps the idea that one worships the God of the people among whom one lives. This is not David's own view, but his report of the views of others who were, saying the 1st and 2nd Samuel do not envision a limitation to the power of the Lord. So he had an understanding from evidently ideas that were in place that he must die on the soil where he has a connection to his Lord and God in heaven.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Interesting.
I think it's interesting that Saul says in verse 21, first off, he admits wrongdoing. That's pretty big. And he says, "Come back, I will never harm you again." Whether Saul will keep that promise or not. I mean, we kind of seen how Saul is with oaths, right?
Right.
But we never really get a chance because this really is the last time that David and Saul meet.
What kind of a time frame do you feel that might have been? Is there any way to figure that out?
In what way? Like what year?
Yeah, how many years were they in this process of trying to outdo each other? Seems like such a waste of their efforts.
I don't know that we know. I'm sure a quick Google search could compile all of the
I might look that up.
available data, but I'm not sure. But the years that David was on the run from Saul.
Right. What's the time frame? That took a lot of time and effort to do all these different steps. And
yeah, I don't know if we have a complete timeline.
yeah,
Everything is kind of reported in succession. And I don't know that there really is any report of the amount of time, except in the next chapter, we get that he was with the Philistines for a year and 4 months.
ChatGPT estimates David spent about 8 to 10 years on the run from Saul.
oh my word.
Well, there you go.
There I go. Yes, thanks.
If ChatGPT says it,
Yeah,
That's
it
got
must
a,
be true.
that's right.
well, that's not, no, I didn't mean that, but it does have some sources
Yeah.
that kind of explains it. Says during those years he lived in places like Adullam, Keilah, Zeph, and Gedi and Palestine territory.
Wow.
And he said he became king of Judah at age 30. In 2 Samuel 5:4. And he was in the service of Saul's court around the age of 20.
Wow.
You know, when he was playing the harp and all that, or whatever it was. I mean, it's plausible, but that's
That's probably, yeah.
Well, the other AI theologian, Google, says David was on the run from King Saul for approximately 13 years. This period of time began after Saul first tried to kill David and ended with Saul's death, which is when David officially became king over Judah, followed by all of Israel. So
Well,
Somewhere between 8 and 13 years.
well, it was a long time.
It was a
know
long
that,
time.
I know he didn't become king immediately after Saul died. There was a little bit of time there. Probably wasn't that long, but there were some loose ends to wrap up. And then Saul says, I have been a fool. Now, where have we heard that before?
Yeah.
So there again, we're making the connection between Nabal and Saul, which Nabal was taken by God, right?
So I had a
Lord
question.
struggle.
Do we think this is a second separate sparing of Saul's life, or is this a retelling of the story which we have seen in this which we've seen multiple times in Samuel? Because I mean, I think there are similarities
Yeah.
with
Good question.
chapter 24
Yeah.
too. So I'm just wondering, did he spare his life twice? And he decided after that Saul came after him again, even after the first incident with the cutting of the robe, or do we think it's just another retelling of the same story?
No.
Yeah. I mean, the short answer is we can't know for sure, you know, but I would guess, I would lean towards saying it's a retelling because it starts the exact same way. So then the Ziphites came to Saul at Gibeah saying, David is hiding on the hill of Hachilah, is the exact same in chapter 23, verse 19. I mean, not the exact same, but almost word for word is how it begins.
Oh, yeah.
So, so it begins in much the same way. So what could be is that there's, you know, the core of the story is that David had an opportunity to kill Saul and he didn't. But maybe there's two different tellings of how that transpired in the conversation that happened between them. And it's just like we have, you know, when you read in the Gospels, we have multiple different tellings of the story, the feeding of the 5,000. The core of the story is the same, but some of the details are a little bit different. And a lot of those stories are pretty similar, but some of the details are a little different.
The title of my chapter 26 is David Spares Saul Again.
Yes.
So,
yes. And keep in mind that the titles are put in there by whoever's editing the.
right, I know that, but
Yeah.
it kind of jumps out there when you're starting to read about it.
Yeah. So, but it doesn't read like Saul and David remember the first time,
No,
right?
not at all.
So it could be a retelling, but again, this is all being compiled many years, generations later,
Right.
after David's life, by an editor, a scribe, somebody in the temple court. These stories that have been out there, have been floating around, probably have been written down for some time. And but the book in its final form was not composed until likely several hundred years later after the events themselves.
I have no idea.
So it probably took some time. And so, you know, whoever is editing the book together probably had these two stories and saw how they go together. And so they put them very close together here.
That's good.
So that we could get the full picture. You know, I always go back to that that parable about the blind men and the elephant. We have, you know, 4 different blind men, and they've never seen an elephant before. They have the opportunity to touch an elephant. One of them touches its leg, and another one touches its trunk, and another one touches its tusk, and they all, you know, report back different visions of what an elephant looks like.
Right.
But if you put all of those together,
Yeah.
then you actually get more of what an elephant looks like.
Right.
And so when we're reading these stories in the Bible and we get what seem to be these repeats, I kind of think about that parable and think about how, you know, there's a core truth here of what happened that we can get out of this story. So
In the previous story, didn't Saul acknowledge that David would become king? And
yes.
this one he just sort of says you're going to be blessed, you'll do great things and surely triumph, but he doesn't really say the same way, right?
Yeah. Yeah, he goes further in some ways, but not as far in others.
Yeah.
Right.
You know, and I think in the first story he said in 24 he says, you are more righteous than I. Yeah. You have repaid me good, I have repaid you evil.
Verse
Now I know
20.
you shall surely be king.
Yeah. And he asked asked David not to cut off his descendants from the Lord.
Yeah.
Saul seems a little more repentant in the first story.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
he does say here in verse 21, I've done wrong. I've been a fool. I've made a great mistake. So there's that as well. But he does not acknowledge David will be king in this one.
Yeah.
But something else to point out in both of these is that he uses David's name. Whereas remember before you know, there was a point in time he wouldn't even say David's name.
Right.
He just called him that son of Jesse.
Right.
But he
Yeah.
did.
So I kind of get the feeling, and especially if we do see this as a retelling, that in this story that Saul maybe does come back to himself just a little bit. But he's already too far gone. He's already too far gone into his madness, which we'll see next week in chapter 28.
It also says in both 17 and verse 21 when he says David my son both times, which is even more. I don't know if that, you know, if that just means younger person, or if that means, or what he means by that. But
I think it is a term of affection, a term of endearment.
Well, he is his son-in-law, right?
Technically, well, not anymore.
well, not anymore.
Oh,
Oh, that's right. He gave away his wife to the other
He
one.
gave his wife to somebody else.
Somebody else.
why not?
Yeah. You know, so before we move on, we haven't talked about Abner
No,
yet.
that's interesting.
Boy, Abner sure catches it from David, doesn't he?
Boy, didn't he though? Are you not a man? That's a good.
Yeah. What did you think of that little exchange? He doesn't get a chance to respond either.
Not at all.
Yeah, I don't see the purpose of that.
I agree.
Well, because Abner was supposed to be
The
keeping
guard.
watch over Saul.
Yeah, but you know, so is all the other people. So what
True.
the and God put him to sleep, and David must have known that. You know, I don't know. It's
Well-
kind of I don't know. I don't like it.
It struck you. It struck you the wrong way.
Yeah.
Kind of strikes me that David's chastising Abner, saying because David still has respect for Saul, as the anointed king, and so David's kind of saying to Abner, "Hey, what if I wasn't the one that came in there? You're supposed to be protecting Saul, and you just let somebody walk in that could have killed him. You're, delinquent in your duties." And he just
Mhm.
sort of chastises him for falling asleep. And I thought after what David said, calling him out there, that I thought Saul might have Abner killed, because Saul would realize that Abner didn't do his job. But obviously that didn't happen.
No.
No.
Well, we don't know that.
Well, Abner is killed later by somebody else.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Then we do know that. Okay.
Yeah. But yeah, I'm not so sure that David knew that God put everybody to sleep. I think he kind of, he trusted God. But I think he kind of snuck into the camp to kind of see what was going on
Mhm.
and managed to get so far. And I think he may have even been a little surprised that he got as far as he did and got that opportunity. And then he had to hold his man Abishai back. One can imagine possibly the struggle, because apparently Abishai has a reputation for violence.
Yeah.
And so, and so maybe he does kind of feel this, even though Saul is after him. I think he did love Saul at one point, and he certainly has respect for the office of
Right.
king. And in this chapter, David is playing the role of protector over Saul,
Mhm.
even though it's him that had the opportunity to kill him.
And then it does make sense, and
He doesn't. He kind of
yeah,
protects
what
Saul from
Cam
himself.
says, yeah, that makes sense. That he's trying to point out that his protection is weak.
He's almost saying, "Look, I'm a better protector than you, and you're
Yeah.
supposed to be the commander of the army. You're
Right.
the king's bodyguard. You're in charge."
You're in charge.
Yeah. So, and I would think at that time they would have different shifts of people that would keep watch to make sure this kind of thing didn't happen. But again, we know that God put everybody to sleep, and that's why. So. Anything else on chapter 26? Let's go to chapter 27 then. And it's very short, but we also want to read just the first 2 verses of chapter 28, because that will kind of complete the unit. So whoever reads chapter 27, would you also read verses 1 and 2 of chapter 28? Who'd like to read for us?
Right, Alex,
I
you
can
want-
read.
Okay, you let her.
You want me to go ahead?
Go ahead.
Go ahead, Susan.
And David said in his heart, I shall now perish one day by the hand of Saul. There is nothing better for me than that I should escape to the land of the Philistines. Then Saul will despair of seeking me any longer within the borders of Israel, and I shall escape out of his hand. So David arose and went over, he and the 600 men who were with him, to Achish, the son of Maash, king of Gath. And David dwelt with Achish at Gath, he and his men, every man with his household, and David with his 2 wives, Ahinoam of Jezreel and Abigail of Carmel, Nabal's widow. And when it was told Saul that David had fled to Gath, he sought for him no more. Then David said to Achish, if I have found favor in your eyes, let a place be given me in one of the country towns, that I may dwell there. For why should your servant dwell in the royal city with you? So that day Achish gave him Ziklag. Therefore Ziklag has belonged to the kings of Judah to this day. And the number of the days that David dwelt in the country of the Philistines was 1 year and 4 months. Now David and his men went up and made raids upon the Geshurites, the Girzites, and the Amalekites, for these were the inhabitants of the land from of old, as far as Shur, to the land of Egypt. And David smote the land and left neither man nor woman alive, but took away the sheep, the oxen, the asses, the camels, and the garments, and came back to Achish. When Achish asked, against whom have you made a raid today? David would say, against the Negeb of Judah, against the Negeb of the Jerahmeelites, or against the Negeb of the Kenites. David saved neither man nor woman alive to bring tidings to Gath, thinking, lest they should tell us about it and say, so David has done. Such was his custom while he dwelt in the country of the Philistines. And Achish trusted David, thinking, he has made himself utterly abhorred by his people Israel. Therefore he shall be my servant always. In those days, the Philistines gathered their forces for war to fight against Israel. And Achish said to David, understand that you and your men are to go out with me in the army. David said to Achish, very well, you shall know what your servant can do. And Achish said to David, very well, I will make you my bodyguard for life.
All right, thank you. You, Susan. All right. So I was confused when I first read this, so I imagine there's some confusion. So what David is doing is he's living in Gath, and he's asked to reside in an outlying town away from under the king's nose. Okay. But he's expected with his fighting men to render service to the king in order to reside in the land. Right. And so he's going out and he's raiding these people, the Geshurites, the Girzites, and the Amalekites, who are also enemies of Israel. And then he's coming back and he's giving the spoils to Achish, or Achish, or however you want to say it. And he's telling him, oh, this is from the people of Judah, or the Jerahmeelites, who are also, people from Judah, or the Kenites, who are also people from Judah. So Achish is thinking, oh, he's raiding his own people, and so they definitely don't like him anymore. There's no way he can go back to Israel. He's made himself hateful to them. And so Achish, the king, trusts him. But see, David's been lying. He's actually been raiding the enemies of Israel. He hasn't been going against his own people. He's just been lying to the king. And so he says the reason he's not leaving any people alive when he goes out on these raids is that nobody would return to the king and tell him what David's really doing. So he's doing it to kind of hide the fact of that he's lying to the king. Now we can feel all sorts of ways about that, but that's what's happening. But now David's got himself in a rock and a hard place because the king trusts him so much that he's pulling him out into battle against Israel, which is exactly what David does not want to do. And furthermore, he's making him his own personal bodyguard. So the text kind of leaves us there in suspense. How's David going to get out of this one? Because if he's seen fighting as the bodyguard for the king against Israel, that would definitely ruin any chance he has at the throne in Israel. So, does that make sense? Now, having said that, I take your silence for a yes. Having said that, now we can have a discussion about it, about how we feel about David doing this.
Horrible.
And any other comments or questions you might have on this little section here.
So he's lying to him and raiding other places, not where he's telling him.
Correct.
Okay. Tricky.
Uh-huh. So he wants to continue to stay in the land, but in order to stay, he has to render service unto the king, right? David's a fighting man. He's got a band of fighting men with him. So what's their service? They're to go out and do these raids and bring back the spoils of war. That's what they do. That's how he renders service.
He said earlier in 27, as we pointed out, that he's forced into living like this because of Saul's pursuit.
Correct. Yes.
So he has no place
other
else to
option.
go. So in order to live in this situation, he has to show his loyalty to the king. But then in order to remain loyal to his to Israel, he's attacking enemies of Israel and enemies of the Philistines, and raiding them, and then lying about it so that in order to maintain his peaceful or safety, maintain his safety in with the king, away from Saul. So I think, he's lying about it, but
it's almost like he's a spy.
Yeah.
That in a way.
Yeah.
He's just kind of doing what he has to do to survive.
Mm-hmm.
Well, as the Concordia study says, the picture we get of David in Scripture is not of an idealized hero
Right.
of unblemished rectitude.
Oh, man.
Right.
Yeah.
Apparently wavering in his conviction that the Lord would deliver him out of all tribulation, he decided on a desperate expedient. His flight to one of the 5 capitals of Israel's archenemy did indeed put him beyond Saul's reach, but it also created serious dilemmas from which he had to extricate himself by resorting to wily cunning and morally questionable tactics. He duped Achish, the Philistine king, into making him governor of one of his cities, Ziklag. Then, using this appointment, he continued to hoodwink his trusting overlord. He pretended to make forays against his own people of Judah, whereas in reality he made raids upon various tribes which molested Israel. Lest they should tell about his deception, he left neither man nor woman alive in the communities he raided.
Mm.
So it's an interesting foray for sure.
And here again, we have another ends justify the means question. I mean, you know, to our modern sensibilities, when you put the two scenarios together, killing Saul versus killing all of these different communities, you know, one seems to be much less worse
Right.
than the
Well,
other. But you know, that's us looking at it with our modern take on it. So
Oh, yeah.
well, but killing Saul, he would be going against God because Saul was
Absolutely.
appointed to be king by God,
yeah,
whereas even God had asked the Israelites to go and kill the Amalekites and what were the other ones?
Yeah.
Kenites.
yeah.
So wasn't it with the Amalekites that Saul was supposed to destroy and didn't? Or was that a different one?
Well, yeah, that's the other interesting thing is that he did, except for the king,
Right,
and then Samuel killed the king, right?
right, right,
But they're still there.
right.
So
So,
yeah.
So and I guess in David's situation, he's trying to do things that would please God. I'm thinking, he's trying to be loyal to God. He's not being loyal necessarily to Saul. He's not being loyal to or trying to be loyal to the king, the Philistine king, but he's trying to be loyal to God, but he's having to lie to do it.
Yeah.
So I don't know. That's between him and God, I guess. I'll ask them that question when I get there again. That's the second one. I need to start writing these questions down because I'm not gonna remember.
you have perfect memory when you get there.
Oh, is that okay? Good.
Yeah, I think it upsets our modern sensibilities. At least it upsets me a little bit. But I don't think David really thought he was doing anything wrong at all
Mm.
by conducting these raids.
Mm-mm.
That's just what you did. That's what they did
Yeah.
back then.
I guess what I'm
Maybe-
wondering is, I mean, not that I would necessarily trust Saul after everything he did, but
Yeah.
we read twice where, the first time his life was spared, he made the oath, he wanted his family protected. And then the second time there was all this sort of apology and you're a better person than I am. So I guess, I guess I'm not sure why all of a sudden he felt like he was going to be killed by Saul still, even after that sort of happened and they had that meeting, that he felt he had to go to Philistine and kill all these people. I guess that's one thing that I just, why after all that did he still decide he didn't trust Saul and run off and then all these communities were killed?
Yeah. I don't know. I mean, Saul hasn't been the most trustworthy of late, but I kind of agree with you, Sharon. It seems to me that Saul has kind of made a turn here in these stories. But at the same time, I can see David's side. He definitely feels like Saul just won't stop coming after him. And maybe this word of apology is too little too late. I don't know.
I think it's interesting too that it said a couple times that they were killing the men and the women, but there's nothing mentioned about children being killed. And obviously, he must have done it because he wanted nobody to tell anything. And that's kind of what gets me too.
Yeah. Yeah, there again is a difference in the times.
Mm-hmm.
This is something that they regularly did, and not just David, but all those people. The people of those communities wouldn't have hesitated to turn around and do the same thing.
Mhm.
And in fact, they do later on. But
Yeah, it says in my in something I've looked at that the uh, that those three they were long-term enemies of Israel, the people that he raided.
mhm.
So, I assume that it was almost like, the stories about how the Indian tribes killed each other constantly. These little people groups were
Mhm.
constantly fighting during that time, and they probably didn't think that they were subhuman if you weren't from my tribe that you were worthless.
Mhm.
We still do that. Uh,
We do. We do. I think,
Mhm. Yep.
yeah, yeah. Um, I do think in a lot of ways, excuse me, in a lot of ways we've grown. Um, and there again, as I was talking about earlier, how our beliefs have changed over time. I think that over time that on the whole we grow closer to God as humanity. Um, mm, and to the point that I think there's a lot of people that out there that nowadays um, would see just the immorality of that way of thinking and be able to see the humanity in other people. I wish some of them could get into leadership. But I do think it's a more common sentiment today than it was back then. But maybe I'm just overly optimistic. Well, David's got himself between a rock and a hard place. Saul isn't faring much better. He's about to encounter the ghost of Christmas past, or is it Christmas future coming up here? And then we'll be right about finished with the book in just a couple weeks. So, any last minute comments or anything before we wrap up tonight?
We are going to go to Samuel 2 next, aren't we?
Next spring, I need a bit of a break in the spring, but I don't know. You want to come back again next year and do Samuel 2, 2 Samuel?
Gotta
Continue
see
the
how it
story?
ends.
I'll think about it. All right. Well, let's go to prayer.